Hello everyone. Welcome to the session on benchmarking. My name is David and I'm a member of the WAITRO board, and I've been involved in benchmarking and also how we do benchmarking in WAITRO and trying to promote that. And my travel with benchmarking started back in 2001. My boss was invited to the Hook in South Africa, and he couldn't go, so he sent me instead. And that's how I got into a meeting where I met 9 other RTOs, and we started looking at how do we do things and how could we improve our processes. So that was kind of how I got into this field. And today we have an interesting session on looking at benchmarking and how we work with benchmarking in WAITRO. What is the setup here? And we'll have a presentation on the WAITRO benchmark that Yucheng will give. And then after that, we have got a really good panel lined up that will give us an introduction to benchmarking, and we'll discuss some of the issues, but we'll also be encouraging you to give some interaction. And we'll try to keep it a bit snappy and business and get going with it. And so that's the intention. So without further ado, then I think the output today could be very much how can we work with benchmarking in WAITRO, what can we do differently, and what should we do going forward. So I think that was my short introduction, and then Yucheng will just give 15 minutes of telling us about the WAITRO benchmark exercise and how that has been going on and the results of it, and then we'll go to the panel discussion. Yucheng, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Yucheng from the WAITRO Secretariat, and I'm also working in the Overseas Cooperation Department at National Innovation Center by Excellence, in short of NICE. I can control. And I'm very pleased to present the WAITRO benchmarking project. It's an initiative designed to support research and technology institutes, in short of RTOs, in driving productive, qualitative, and optional excellence. So this project is unique in that it's not just about reaching an endpoint or achieving a single goal. Rather, it's about embarking on a journey of continuous learning, improvement, and growth. So, our journey with benchmarking began in 1994, and with manual data collection and interview at about 60 RTOs to evaluate their practices. And over the year, as we gathered insights and refined our process, the project evolved significantly. So in 2020, the 25th WAITRO General Assembly recommended creating an online benchmarking tool, which received strong support from WAITRO alumni network. So by 2021, we had transformed it digitally, launching an online platform that allows us to collect and analyze data submitted by 30 RTOs from around the globe. So our objective reflects the ongoing journey. The WAITRO benchmarking project aims to enhance RTO's effectiveness by systematically analyzing core management processes. And we also aim to build a culture of knowledge sharing that benefits the entire RTO community. And this is our team. So our team combines extensive experience in RTO management and also benchmarking. So David Greer, he developed the original methodology for WAITRO's benchmarking and has participated in 3 projects to enhance it. And Moses Mungu, He is the former director of DTI and a past WAITRO secretary head, and he plays a key role in the first benchmarking project and also leads the second and third benchmarking project, and he led the studies globally. And Moses is here today. And also Knud Erik, and he has over 25 years experience at DTI. He will also speak in the panel discussion shortly. And also Chu Qiao and I led the development of the online benchmarking project, the online benchmarking tool, and organized webinars and other events to promote and present the project results. Then I will dive into the project itself. So here are some key terms. For RTOs, benchmarking is a structured approach to enhance organizational effectiveness by analyzing process. So those are steps or procedures that lead to specific results in areas such as selling, training, and decision-making. And through benchmarking, RTOs identify successful practices, the models used by leading organizations to execute this process effectively. So practice describe how these processes are carried out, focus on the method and technology used. By observing top organizations, RTO can refine their own approaches. And then performance indicators. So both quantitative, like selling figures, and also qualitative, such as customer satisfaction, help us measure the success of these processes. Last, practice are categorized into best, good, and bad practice. So best practices consistently deliver optimal results and become benchmarks for others to follow. Yeah, so we use this RTO conceptual model to identify process area, in short, PAs, and individual processes. So this model includes like social context and ownership, which shapes RTO's approach to research and technology. And the RTO's board and structure, its guide, its strategy and activities. And also inside the RTOs, there are like management and business development, and also some key support areas. Oh, it hides behind the, yeah, like human resource, facilities, and finance. So these components help establish a comprehensive view of RTO's operational environment, identifying where best practice can lead to meaningful improvements. And we choose these 8 process areas, and each process area consists of a number of processes, and process is a procedure leading to a result. So for each process, we ask RTOs to describe their practices and provide performance data for calculating the performance indicator, PIs. And these are PIs. So these PIs such as revenue growth and project complete rate, these are the quantitative PIs indicators. And we also have qualitative indicators like staff satisfaction, client satisfaction. So although quantitative data is preferred, we supplemented it with qualitative indicators when needed. So this combination gives us a holistic view of each process effectiveness. Okay. And to facilitate the data collection, we developed an online questionnaire. It's a website that includes some 3 parts of questionnaires. The first part is input form of about 19 questions to collect like financial, employee, and also client data. And also we have the second one, we have 60 practice identification questions to pinpoint the practices each RTO use. And also we have a follow-up survey to gather RTO's feedback on benchmarking system and gauge interest in further service. Okay. And to help RTO interpret the result, we provide a clear explanation on our website, and practice are listed on the left side, while the rightmost column shows the practice used by the RTOs. And for example, for this process, we can see the red one, practice B, is likely to be best practice for this process because it has the practice ranking is number 1. So participants can also see the percentage and ranking of their practice across all RTOs and offering a comparative view to guide improvements. So, one significant benefit of this project is that progressive RTOs continuously sharing their new practices, which can become benchmarks for others. So, for example, we receive a new practice from RTOs. So these RTOs said that their board of directors sets its mission and vision through discussion with staff, clients, and stakeholders. This demonstrates a collaborative approach that others may find valuable. So this diversity of methods underscores the main goal of this project, that is discovering innovative practices that RTO can adopt and adapt. So no journey is without its challenges. And for this project, we collect data from about 30 RTOs. So this data from 30 RTOs limits statistical significance. So we also want to encourage more RTOs to join us, which will enhance the data robustness and enable more meaningful insights. So now the phase 1 of our online benchmarking project has completed, and the website is temporarily unable to accept new RTO data. However, we are eager to hear from you. If there's enough interest from RTOs, we are considering to launching the phase 2 of the benchmarking project. Additionally, we also welcome any suggestions on how we can optimize our calculation format and online tools, and to make the online tool more effective. We want to hear your voice. We also noted that from our survey, we also noticed that the top 3 process areas that RTO are most interesting, that are RTO service, business development, and capability building. So as we look ahead in this afternoon session, I'd like to invite each of you to continue this journey with us as we dive into these 3 areas. So the afternoon session are designed to foster open discussion, inspire collaboration, and allow us to exchange valuable insights. Whether you are interested in enhancing client service, developing your business strategy, or strengthening your team, I want to invite you to approach this session with an open mind and ready to explore new ideas and take away actionable insights. Okay, in closing, I want to emphasize once again that the WAITRO benchmarking is a journey, one we are all together. It challenges us to be better and to grow. So we can learn from one another and remain open to growth. So I'm also very excited to continue this journey with each of you, and I look forward to a very productive day of exploration, collaboration, and discovery. And if you are interested in the benchmarking project, you can scan the code and send your email to us. And I will send our project report to you, your email. Yeah. And thank you very much, and I hope you can enjoy the later panel discussion, and I look forward to hearing your voice in the afternoon session. Thank you.
Thank you, Yucheng. Very nice. And the QR code will come up again afterwards, so you can see it again when we're finished with the session. It'll come again, and also you are welcome to ask questions also to Yucheng when we get to the question and answer part of it and comments. But for now, I'll invite the panel to come and join me up here. So the panel consists of Knud Hilding-Hamann, who has been very much involved in the benchmarking project, Patrick Diaz, who's from CSIRO and also has been working with benchmarking a lot, and Mike Russell, who is from KUKA, UK, but also was at the Welding Institute, so has a background also in the business, and Nick, who looks at talent development and also business development. So how do you improve processes? How do you improve your organization? So it's quite a panel of people I have up here. And to kick it off, I'll let each panelist just give a 3-minute, 4-minute presentation on introduction to their perspective on benchmarking, and including the approaches conceptually and also the frameworks that they use. So I'll pass it on to Erik to lead us off.
Okay, thank you, David. So I got into benchmarking as a manager of an innovation support scheme for SMEs. It goes back quite a few years. Over 10 years, we delivered SME innovation support to almost 5,000 SMEs in Denmark. We gathered quite a lot of data about these SMEs, and were able to compare them. We were able to assess which strategies would work for which categories of SMEs. Since then, I've been very privileged to work with WAITRO and WAITRO institutes to improve innovation support to SMEs, and working with the practices that the various institutes are using in order to support SMEs. Then lately, as Yucheng was saying, I got involved in the benchmarking project, taking the old systems that were developed by the previous developers, including Moses, in order to help institutes to benchmark their processes and comparing their performances in order to help them improve their processes. More lately, I've also been involved in departmental benchmarking at the Danish Technological Institute. We've seen quite successful use of benchmarking in order to help different departments improve their commercial sales, and also to improve the private co-funding of publicly funded R&D projects. So by giving very specific data from each department, we were able to see how which practices were performing, and through that we've been quite successful at the DTI in actually transferring practices between departments in order to improve the baseline of commercial sales, as well as co-funding of R&D projects across departments. So I see a lot of potential in benchmarking, but I also see limits. We all understand that benchmarking is about measurements, but in the end, improvements come from change of behavior, and change of behavior is something that is culture defined and can be very difficult. So it's a journey, and it's a journey that may take longer than most people think. But the measurements can help in actually giving inspiration to that journey.
Thank you very much, Knud Erik. And then Patrick, we've been working on benchmarking for many years, so please.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. I'm from CSIRO, Australia, based in Sydney. And I joined CSIRO, which is the sort of usual notation. I joined CSIRO in 2013. And on the second day, I was asked to meet up with a team of officers from NRC Canada, CSIR South Africa, and TNO Netherlands. I didn't have a clue about what the whole project was about, but with my background in key performance indicators development, so that is how I joined CSIRO. So the meeting on the second day was about a benchmarking project. They wanted to form a benchmarking working group, which CSIRO and NRC Canada was the leading RTOs, as RTOs funded by the government. And with that, we continued, and subsequently DTI joined as well. And 2013 to 2019, we continued that based on a model with 21 KPIs on 5 areas like the revenue, technology, the bibliometrics, and cost, and also culture. And along with that, we established a working group which we ended up in 2019 with 8 RTOs. That is including CSIRO, DTI, CSIR South Africa, NRC Canada, RISE Sweden, and CNA Italy, and A-STAR Singapore, and ACE Japan. And also we had IPT from Brazil. And with this experience, we developed a model that was agreed by more or less all these RTOs to identify these key performance areas. And we collected data on annual basis, and we representatives met annually after producing the report. NRC Canada and CSIRO undertook the responsibility of preparing the report, data collection, analysis, and preparing the report. And then we had a number of other RTOs interested in that model and joining us. And it came to a point that we could not manage by ourselves. So fortunately, RTO, European Association of RTOs, they raised their hand up. They are happy to undertake this, and they are still continuing on that, and they undertook to take this forward with their support, and they are using the same model as the benchmarking working group what we initiated in 2013, with of course some it evolved and some changes. So we are proud to say that it is still continuing, and in 2021, we had 12 RTOs coordinated by RTO. And then we thought, as far as CSIRO was concerned, we thought benchmarking is not only a collection of numbers and comparing numbers. So we thought we had established our trend patterns in terms of comparison to the others. We thought we should move into a different area of benchmarking. And then in 2022, CSIRO initiated and CSIRO sponsored this project to benchmark 4 processes, business processes, of course, along with the consent from all the participating RTOs. And we had 5 RTOs CSIRO DTI, TISTR Thailand, Sirim Berhad Malaysia, and CSIR South Africa. So we compared the processes, the business processes of each RTO. 4 processes included SME engagement, commercialization processes, KPI development, and university and other collaboration with PFRAs. PFRAs means publicly funded research associations. So that is how my experience had been involved in all these 12 years. So happy to answer any questions later.
Thank you, Patrick. Very nice. And thanks for all your work on the benchmarking. I think it's a very big advantage for us in benchmarking that we can work together because we are kind of geographically differentiated. So we don't look at each other as competitors, but as colleagues and friends. So that has been a lot of the sharing of knowledge. So, Mike, can we hear your perspectives?
Yeah, thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. Great pleasure to be here in Nanjing again, and thank you to WAITRO and to JITRI, obviously, for hosting such an excellent event. So I think I'd briefly introduce my background and experience in 3 areas in relation to this discussion. So firstly, my current role is Managing Director of KUKA Systems UK. So we produce and supply advanced manufacturing equipment and industrial automation solutions. KUKA is a German company by foundation, but actually our primary shareholder is Meidi, based in Shunde. So we have fantastic links and connections into China. We are a commercial business. So actually for us, benchmarking and KPI frameworks are often a financial measure and consideration. We use a set of frameworks developed by the parent company, and we talk regularly about the effectiveness and efficiency of our operations against those frameworks and against the overall group. So that's probably the commercial view. The second area I'll talk about is my previous job to this one was as a director at a large UK RTO, where I spent about 8 years in a director position. One interesting part of that work was developing what we called a balanced scorecard for the organization. So we had probably about $30 million turnover business, about 200 different technologies in 20 different areas, lots of different businesses effectively working together under the same roof. And we went on a little bit of a journey, as Knud Erik described, to have a conversation about what we were trying to achieve as individual teams, as groups, and then as an organization overall. And we developed a really nice scorecard system that captured what success was for that organization. Really interesting cultural journey. We might get the chance to talk a little bit more about that in the discussion. Finally, I guess my third hat today is in my spare time, I'm a non-exec director at the International Lean Six Sigma Institute. So at the Institute, we're really interested in operational excellence, frameworks and measures for that, but also the kind of practical toolkits and processes and approaches that you can use to generate real change within organizations. So again, that might be something we have the opportunity to talk about in this discussion.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, very interesting. So, Nick, you're the last in line here. Go ahead.
Last. So, hello everyone. Da jia hao. And I think in that is the first C of our 3C approach. Benchmarking, the first C is comparison. And in the West, we say, hello everyone. Every one. China, da jia hao. Da, big. Jia, family. Hao, good. So you can see there is a comparison there, which then leads to the second C is curiosity. And I think any benchmarking will have comparison, but if you don't have that curiosity to explore what those two things are, then it's an interesting epistemological exercise, but it doesn't get you to the soul of any culture. And the final C, so comparison, curiosity, the final C is context. And the context that we explore or use based on Brenda Zimmerman and David Snowden's Canavan framework, is there is a difference between the simple, the complicated, and the complex. So benchmarking in the simple is when you are benchmarking between organizations that are doing the same thing. So that is fairly simple to do, and it can be competitors or non-competitors in the same area. Where it's complicated, what we look at is the constraints. What are the constraints? So I'll give you one example of a project we did with a national airline. The constraint, they wanted to benchmark in-flight short-haul service. So we've probably all suffered, especially if we sit in the back of economy, for in-flight short-haul service. The constraints are supply chain. You've got to get it right. You can't go back if you forgot the lemon-scented tissues. After you've taken off, you've got to have it right. Limited space, limited time, noisy, so the communication is difficult, and there are other constraints as well. But essentially, we took those constraints and then said, right, what is the best in class for those constraints? And the best in class is the Formula One racing team pit stop. So we benchmarked what they were doing in the short-haul service, in-flight service, against the pit stop in the Formula One, and learned a lot by what they were doing. So that's the complicated, and that's what we call LEAP. Best practice for the simple, LEAP for the complicated. The final one is the complex, where we really have our main expertise, applying complexity science and changing mindset and behavior. And there it's about exploration. One example, for example, is changing mindset of individuals in an organization by benchmarking against each other every day. And that journey leads to improved performance. So the three different areas have three different approaches, and look forward to exploring a bit more. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I love your definition there of the three C's. Very nice. And especially the curiosity, you know, why are they doing it as they're doing it? And also the context, which of course is very different for different countries. What is the amount of basic funding? What is the cultural context? And so on. So, moving on, we'll do the next round, just a little open, and then after that we'll open up questions from the floor. So, how do we actually get value out of the benchmarking? And so what are the challenges and what are strategies for getting some value out of the benchmarking? So I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah,
Mike, go ahead.
Have a start. Yeah, I think one of the things that occurs to me from my experience is that leadership in the commercial setting and in the RTO setting is quite different. And actually, I think leadership in an RTO setting is more challenging than in a commercial business. I have experience of. In a commercial business, predominantly you're there to generate shareholder value, to generate profit. You know, there have been some good discussions this week about a triple bottom line concept: people, profit, planet. But the reality is most commercial businesses are driven to produce profit, and that gives you a really clean kind of line of authority through the business and the vision and the mission. If you move to an RTO setting, you have a whole range of different stakeholders, opinions, interpretations, and I think there the job of leadership is to provide clarity and focus to the direction and the vision of that business. And that's where I think benchmarking as a process, as an exercise, can be hugely valuable in collecting together those stakeholders and having that conversation, and as Erik was saying, going on that journey to achieve a vision of what good looks like for the organization.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, just extending from what was mentioned, one of the key experiences what we have found, no two RTOs are similar. We found that's basically, if you look at some of the RTOs, just by looking at the size of the RTO, just comparing JITRI to CSIRO even, they have 16,000 scientific staff here. We have 4,000. But, and also the funding. So it's very difficult to identify two RTOs which has similar. I think as what David mentioned before, the benchmarking, I think it comes to the aspects of behavior. And the other thing we found out was some of their KPIs, if you are trying to benchmark, that may be applicable to one RTO may not be applicable to the other because of their socio-economic status and other factors. So it is, if you look at the benchmarking, the definition, it says comparing like with the like. But it's not, I mean, you have to keep that in mind when we are benchmarking either the processes or whether benchmarking the KPIs or the performance of RTOs.
Thank you. Yeah. Erik?
So if we start off with the WAITRO benchmarking project, I think one of the value many of the institutes would have gotten out of it is to consider that, well, hey, maybe we should be measuring this because looking at the kind of questions that we're asked, we don't know how we're performing on this, or we don't know how we're actually doing this process. So as you will see from the report that Yucheng was referring to, quite a number of the institutes had to provide estimates for some of the PIs simply because they are not measuring these PIs today. And I think I'm hoping that that will bring some curiosity towards using measurement as a way of creating opportunities for improving. What you don't measure, it can be very difficult to improve. So that's a good starting point. From there, I agree with Patrick. The institutes are very different, and the cultures are different, and therefore you can't transfer practices directly. The dialogue around the measurements and around the different practices is where I see the value really coming through.
I have a slightly different view, but also complementary. So we're talking about a complex issue. There are lots of variables. But one thing that complexity science shows that underneath complex dynamics, you have a few simple things going on. So I'll give you an example. Mike, you mentioned leadership challenge. One of the things we do normally with a program when we have a group of leaders, we start by asking, what are your day-to-day leadership challenges? And we have data from thousands of leaders from all over the world. And so day-to-day, what are your leadership challenges? And they put a whole load of stuff up on the screen. We have the technology so they can type onto the screen. And then we say, look at that list. I want you to imagine we asked another group of managers in another country, in another industry, the same question. Would the list be the same, or would it be completely different? In other words, are those challenges unique to you, or would those challenges be the same? Now, 85% say, yeah, they'd be the same. So the key thing is, for benchmarking, is be aware of the differences, but also you will always have a foundation of commonality. And in that foundation of commonality, you can build a structure which is on firmer ground, perhaps, because one of the dangers of benchmarking is people say, yeah, but that's not us, or yeah, but they're different. So if you can find that commonality, and that's why I think the WAITRO benchmarking process is very useful, because you all have that commonality. Even though you're in different places, different countries, different cultures, you have a commonality. And I think the second thing is, because of the difference, the measures aren't the thing. It's the journey. It's the journey. And finding out how did they get to X, that will be different in every place. And from those differences, you can also learn. So that's what I would add. Yes, they're different, but there's also a lot of commonality you can build on. And you can make the complex simple by understanding what are the few simple rules that are generating the returns or the results that you see. If you can understand that, then you can build.
Thanks, Nick. I think many of us have been in benchmarking also with Fraunhofer, which is kind of the gold standard often in benchmarking, and we want to do like them. And I think many of us have said, oh, but they have it so easy because so-and-so. So I totally recognize the fact of saying yes, but it doesn't apply to me. So that's a very good point. Thank you. Any other points from here? Otherwise, I think we'll open up and see if anyone has a few questions for us. And then we'll go on afterwards. So is there anyone in the audience who has a question, both to Yucheng from earlier, but also just for discussion in the panel? Yes, please. And where you're from to begin with.
I'm from the CTA in Colombia. We are the focal regional point for Latin America and the Caribbean. And when we got the benchmark, we got like lots of information, right? But we had some troubles. I would say, troubles, some difficulties. Sorry, thank you. So we had some difficulties finding to encourage the use of all the information that we got on the benchmark. And actually, many of the RTOs from Latin America didn't fill out all the information. We tried a lot, encouraged a lot to do and actually we create some spaces to explain the importance of the benchmark, right? So my question is, with all the experience of the panel, how can we encourage more take part of these processes and also use all the information in a very positive way, right? To improve the processes of each RTO.
Thank you. I know CTA has been very involved in the benchmarking, so thank you for that. And I think it is a very broad and good question, so I think we'll take it right away at the panel and take another question afterwards. So Erik, you seem to be ready to go.
I am, yes. And I also want to congratulate CTA for excellent work in bringing the benchmarking project to the rest of the institutes around Latin America. I think maybe the mistake we made was not to start with what Nick said was the journey. Getting the institutes to understand the journey we were embarking on and starting with the challenges they were facing, the joint challenges they were facing. I think had we started the process that way, we would have had more people actually joining us in the process. But hey, it was only the first version. I see that as stepping stone for further activities, and I want to encourage you to continue the journey and get people on board. And I would encourage you to do that by embarking them on a journey and getting them to face what will be joint challenges across the institutes.
Thanks. Nick first.
Yeah, so you asked two questions. One, how to encourage, second, how to use. So the first question, it strikes me there's a sort of perennial, how do we get people to buy in? And the complaint, they're not buying in. Well, actually, I think the problem is it's not about buying, it's about selling. And you need to sell. So how do you sell? Well, first you need to understand the market. Who are the people that you want to buy in? What are their pain points? Then you position the product. You say, productivity is the real... Now, the benchmarking thing we have going on will increase your productivity by X, Y, Z. So you need to sell it. And you sell it by market research, positioning the product, showing the benefits, and maybe the consequences of not buying something. So the problem isn't about buy-in. The problem is about selling, I think. And it's not just for this, it's change management generally. The second thing is, how do we use this? So you're going to get a huge amount of data. And it's, oh my God, what do we do with all this data? Well, 99% of it you ignore. Choose 1% that makes a difference. It's better to do one thing well than 10 things badly. So choose the one thing that you can really get leverage from and focus on that. Otherwise, you just get swamped by all this data. So, you know, some of it will be useful tomorrow. Choose the one today that will make the difference.
Yeah, Mike?
I was going to say something quite similar to Nick. I guess don't try and fix everything all at once. You know, the benchmarking process, particularly if it's new to an organization, will generate a huge amount of information and many more questions than the first questions that you asked. So in terms of generating that change and building momentum for that change, particularly from a sort of Lean Six Sigma perspective, just choose one thing that you're interested in, that perhaps where you see that you might be below where the benchmark level suggests you could be, and where that would make an impact to your organization. And then improve that thing, and that takes you on the first step of the journey.
Thanks. Patrick?
Yes, I think I just want to add, being involved with the WAITRO benchmarking project from CSIRO's point of view, I agree with some of the comments what you made. Even for an organization like CSIRO, we had some issues in trying to provide the information what was requested. But more than that, I just want to add, having the previous experience with other benchmarking framework, dealing with fewer number of RTOs, and continuing with, it gave us an opportunity to network with the RTOs, and we used that to a great extent in identifying some areas where we want to compare, and we had bilateral relationships with other RTOs. So that was one of the key advantages that we came across. It's learning from each other, learning from others as well. So it gave us the opportunity. Now, say for example, we dealt with CSIRO South Africa regarding the commercialization processes, one-to-one. So similarly, we dealt with VTT, Finland, on one-to-one on some selected processes. So that gave us that advantage, identifying that there is an area that we need to focus on, and then you identify another partner or two, and then proceed with that. That was one of the key findings that we had.
Thank you very much. I could add to that we actually also worked with CSIRO on our IT system and how we did that. So it was a big, interesting, and it was sort of a lead-on, was working one-on-one on some of the topics. So, good. Another question from the audience before we go for the panel. Anyone else? Yeah, Jaime, CTA again. Very good.
Well, thank you, David. I am very excited because, well, my name is Jaime Arboleda. I am the Deputy Director of the CTA. I am very excited because at the beginning I heard from Yucheng that there will be a phase 2. So I don't know if it's the time, but can you tell us something, some insights of what will be included in that phase?
I think that the quick answer is that we're also looking for input for that. So your suggestions to it are very, very much welcome. But maybe, Knud, you could maybe elaborate on a few of the ideas that could be in phase 2.
Well, I can certainly give my thoughts on what would be great to have in phase 2. I believe that the WAITRO benchmarking project has missed out the opportunity of networking and has missed out the opportunity of focusing in on what for each of the institutes are important, and having the chance to have those direct exchanges in order to improve practices. So I'm hoping that phase 2 could facilitate that in a greater extent.
Very good. Any other comments from here? Otherwise, I could add that in the benchmarking we've had with CSIRO, where CSIRO has been the lead on it, then definitely the value for us has been then meeting afterwards and discussing what do you actually mean and how come you're so good on this parameter, because we can't see it out of the numbers. So it's the interaction afterwards that really gives something. But so to this session and the next session, input for the future benchmarking is very much welcome. So Yucheng, I don't know if you want to add anything?
We need to hear your voice. Yeah, we want to. What suggestions or any other improvement suggestions you can give us, and we can consider to the phase 2.
Very good. And Knud, just a short comment.
Yeah. So this afternoon we're going to have a more interactive session, and in many ways I see that as the beginning of phase 2, because we're going to have a hypothetical case of an RTO. That is entering the EV market and trying to develop R&D activities in the EV sector. And we're going to be addressing the 3 practice areas that were voted the most important by all the RTOs taking part. So it'll be an exchange of RTOs as to how to go about these specific practices and how to use benchmarking in order to improve practices. And I think it should be interesting discussions, and I hope people will take part actively.
Yeah, Nick?
So as a complete outsider to WAITROs, and WAITRO, I should say, sorry, English, and thank you for inviting me. This has been a very educational day for me, and yesterday as well. It strikes me that you are in the best practice process of benchmarking. So that's really what we would call in the domain of the simple. The next boundary is what we call leap. And then what you do is you look at the constraints, the common constraints. And you forget RTO, you forget WAITRO, you forget where you're working. You just look around the world and see what organizations have these constraints that are doing really well. I'll give you an example. As a program director in the past at London Business School, working with a client, they wanted to improve resilience. And so we then defined what those constraints were, and we found a charity working in the slums of New Delhi, completely different from the petrochemical company. And they went, and it's about inspiration. It's not about, if you like, a defined measure, it's the inspiration. And then the final boundary is what we call explore, which is about benchmarking and exploring from each other on the personal one-on-one or leadership level and seeing new ways of operating. But how did they get there? Because it's a journey, and every journey is different. And then in that journey, you can begin to define your own journey. So those are the sort of boundaries that I would see. Potentially, you can move benchmarking beyond the best practice and amazing. And I would advise everybody to get involved. How many RTOs here who are not in the benchmarking? How many RTOs do we have that are not doing the benchmarking? Yeah. So I would advise getting involved. It's a bit of work. And one of the constraints is, I don't want to share my stuff because we might compete, right? But that's a very zero-sum game. We worked benchmarking with competitors, and the best benchmarking in competitors I've seen is in the UK is John Lewis Partnership. Now that's a retail organization, and they share their data. They do benchmarking in lots of different ways. One of the ways, very keen, is they say never knowingly undersold. In other words, if you find in a competitor something that is cheaper, the same product, we will give the money difference back. What a wonderful way to benchmark. All your customers now are doing the benchmarking for you, seeing what's going on in the market. But they also share all their data. They share their gross margin. In retail, gross margin is the most closely kept secret. And they share it openly. And I asked Stuart Hampton, who is then the CEO, why are you doing this? I mean, it's madness. He said, no, you don't understand. If we can inspire our competitors to be better than us, that will inspire us to be even better than them. So that sharing of the data is about inspiration. It's not about a zero-sum win-lose game. So I would encourage anybody who's not involved in the Waitro's benchmarking project, get involved. You will get fantastic returns. You've got to invest. It's a return on investment. So you've got to put the effort in to get the value out. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Very good. So I think we'll get back to the panel again, and one question to go around the table would be how we can support internal management, but maybe also thought on the need for a champion in management. Because one thing is, of course, if Patrick and I head off and we think everything should be changed, but our management doesn't quite agree, then we might be in trouble. So internal management, benchmarking, thoughts on that from the panel?
Yeah, I can share some experience. I think it relates to the previous point as well. The balanced scorecard process that we went through had maybe 2 or 3 iterations. And as we progressed into subsequent iterations, we started to look quite closely at the value of each KPI against the administrative effort of creating the data for the KPI. And we did this on a monthly cycle. At the leadership level as well, what people should be aware of is that obviously the champion of the benchmarking process has to engage in it, and it actually creates work for you that you need to do regularly, because some of the judgments, and I think Yucheng touched on this in her presentation, are subjective. So you need to be taking leadership decisions, and you're actually committing your time to do that each month to have a clear view. As a bit of a kind of positive example of the benefits that can come from that, one of the things we were able to achieve with our scorecard was to create an opportunity for different managers of different teams to talk to each other. So for the overall organization, I was very keen that we were able to put the whole scorecard on one page. So we had, if you imagine, a grid system where the columns were the 20 groups of the company and the lines were the 10 KPI benchmarks. And then we had a red, amber, green indication each month of where we were against those benchmarks. So you could very quickly just glance at that piece of paper and say, is the organization doing well or not? Then you could look at it from a section point of view and say, look, which sections are performing well and where. And you could look at it at a competence point of view and say, what's the organization particularly good at or bad at? We then had some really interesting conversations where I would sit down with 2 section managers from different parts of the business who would have been in the company for 5 or 10 years and never spoken to each other, because they all have their own little business, they all do their thing. And the point about competitive advantage and sharing of information is very well made. And then you'd say to them, right, I'm not going to be in this discussion. You're going to talk to this person about how they do well on this benchmark. And while you're there, you're going to ask them how you can do better on this benchmark. So off you go. And then suddenly you find in 6 months' time, those teams are working together on a technical project. And wow.
Well, looking at RTOs, I would say that we've certainly found from the project that we ran that it was difficult to set a team within the RTOs, and it would need to consist of several persons from different departments. But in terms of leadership, I would encourage to leave the leadership with the persons that are mostly, charged with the challenge that the improvement challenge that the Institute wishes to focus on. That's where the burning platform is. That's where you want to try and improve your processes most. So have them take the benchmarking project, and then others helping in providing the data, providing some of the practice changes, etc. Have them support these people. So leadership where the challenge is hardest and where you need real activities to go on.
Thanks. Patrick?
Yes, what I want to add is with our experience, I think the management commitment is important as it is an evolving process. And also, we have used in number of occasions, being a government organization funded by the government, which is our annual budget is about 1.5, 1.6 billion Australian dollars, and out of which 60% comes from the government. So the government expects some sort of performance monitoring process. So in that sense, we have used our benchmarking results to convince the government that we are in the right track. So that's one. And also with the internal management aspects. Now, if we select a set of KPIs, some of those KPIs can be cascaded down to different areas. And we have used that approach, and we are maintaining some of those KPIs at the different group level, and we are comparing some of those with the overall benchmarks what we have established. So it gives an opportunity to get an idea, not to compare and just to let down the process. I mean, if they are not, at least to improve, and what strategies that needs to be developed in order to improve those.
Thank you, Patrick. I think also our experience is that it's been very strong for us that we actually know what's going on outside of Denmark. Because then when government says to us, oh, but what is an RTO? And that's a strange thing they say to us. Then we say, but an RTO is something we have in Europe and we have it all around the world. And then they say to us, oh, but we've heard Fraunhofer doing so much better on this and that. And then we say, oh, but that's because of so-and-so. So the fact that we are connected with other RTOs and can, if not benchmark, but also know what's happening around the world in the RTOs has been a very big position for us and a big motivator also to be active. Nick?
So you asked the question on how to support internal and management. I think you've got to change the definition of leadership if you really want to support it. I'll give you an example. We have data from thousands of leaders all over the world. This was also done by the EFQM in Europe, European Foundation for Quality Management. And they looked at organizations that had implemented really good change, step change. And they looked at all the solutions that actually delivered the change, the answers. The actual solutions that actually made the change happen. And there were lots of them. These are large, complex organizations. And then they asked, well, who originally thought of these solutions? Where did they come from? Now, some came from the top, some from the middle, some from the bottom. So a thought experiment for you. Of 100% of solutions that actually deliver, what percent do you think are originally thought of by people at the top? And everybody's, yes, small number, about 10%, maybe 15%. So here's the thing, and this is happening all over the world. So the fact, and that's because things are changing fast. In the old days, you went up to an organization, you did every single job, you understood it all. By the time you get to the top, you know it all. But nowadays, you get promoted, everything's changed anyway. So the fact is that leaders no longer know the answers. Do you think they know they don't know? Yeah, they know. Yeah, in the old days, they turned to God. Today, they turn to McKinsey. But they can't say they don't know, because they're expected to know, because they're the leaders. And they're expected to know by a whole load of people below them who know that they don't know anyway. So what we do is we change the definition of what leadership is. The old days, leadership was I know, you don't, I lead, you follow. We call that leadership 1.0. Still needed, but no longer sufficient. 2.0 is what Mike very well demonstrated, is connecting. You go and talk to them and learn. Off you go. That's the connecting. That's leadership 2.0 going sideways. But even more important is leadership 3.0, and that's leading upwards. So that's about learning to follow the people you lead. And an example there was when you asked, well, hey, WAITRO, up there, what are you going to do about the second phase? And the answer was, well, what do you think? That's leadership 3.0. So by changing the definition of leadership and moving it to a dynamic, rather than a static position with expectation, then you overcome this issue of how do we support. So it's about not only how can leaders empower subordinates, but it's how can subordinates empower leaders, because there's nothing more disempowering for a leader by you saying, you should know, you're the leader, so tell me, because we know you don't know, and it's a charade. So that's our way of overcoming this internal issue of how do we enable management to get involved in what we're doing. And it's about selling, but it's also about a more dynamic approach.
Thanks, Nick. That's thought-provoking for all of us. We don't know, so it's, yeah.
You know you don't know, so don't pretend.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do.
And this thing in China is Mianzi. You know, how can a leader say you don't know? Well, actually you can. You just say, instead of pretending to know, you say, I don't know, but this is an important, how we are going to overcome this. And how do we work together to overcome this? Now that leader will have more face than the leader who stands up pretending that he knows when everybody knows he doesn't know.
No.
Yeah, a key phrase for a leader is, what do you think?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What do you think? And then carry on.
Yeah, that's right. I think in Denmark it's very much the case that people know that the leaders don't know, I think. So it's also culturally...
It's the same all over the world. They just express it in different ways.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Please.
Without microphone? Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Hello, my name's Lloyd Townley. I live here in Nanjing. I worked for CSIRO from 97 to 88, and how I came to leave then I can explain over lunch. In the, say, 88 to 97, what did I say? In the mid-90s, I did a study in some internal management program on CSIRO's experience and success spinning off companies, and the answer was they hadn't. I don't know much about, they had just a handful. I don't know much about benchmarking, but what I'm interested in now is whether, and picking up on what Nick said about returns, what is the result of the benchmarking, what comes out of it? Do we yet have any success stories or any examples of how WAITRO member organizations at the top have taken the results of the benchmarking and actually changed something?
Thanks, that's a very good question. I think we'll just take the questions now and then we'll leave it to the panel. There was one more question. There are two more questions I can see.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Paul Bosu. I'm from CSIR Ghana. I know we are talking about WAITRO benchmarking, but we have had references to, I think from Patrick and also from David, making reference to benchmarking that they did at their organizations. So I want to find out, are you referring to the WAITRO benchmarking we are talking about, which I think it's like 3 years or so, or previous ones that your organization did? Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And do the last question, and then we'll get back to the panel.
I'm from JITRI. So my question is, JITRI now, we are facing lots of challenge. We are growing very fast. And also the RTO like JITRI, we have different level. As you may know that this is a headquarter. Then under JITRI umbrella, we have more than 100 specialized institute, different scale, different size. So my question is, may I ask your recommendation how to adopt WAITRO benchmark to JITRI, this kind of organization? Any suggestion for us? Thanks.
Thank you. I think maybe I'll do just there were 3 questions, and the one was the success stories, so that we'll leave that one. And then there was the discussion as whether it was previous benchmarking. And I think in this case, it was actually previous benchmarking, some of the ones that Patrick mentioned, but maybe Patrick will expand on that. And then there was the JITRI question. So I think I'll leave it to the panel to come with some answers. So who wants to go first?
I can go first, yeah. So first, answering to the last challenge, I would recommend to certainly focus in and focus in on challenges that has a broader or a group of institute sharing those challenges. I would focus in very specifically, I think, going across all the various elements of the WAITRO benchmarking would be too complex. So focusing and identifying those challenges where benchmarking could play a role. And then also what Nick was mentioning, looking for, inspiration in areas where you wouldn't otherwise look. It doesn't necessarily have to be within other RTOs. It could also be in other companies or other organizations where they are particularly successful at addressing a certain challenge. So I'm very much for a broad approach of using benchmarking, but doing it very focused is my recommendation. Answering to the first question, I'm not aware specifically of any companies making direct connection between the benchmarking they undertook and the success they achieved. I think maybe some individual RTOs within their individual benchmarking may have achieved some successes. As a matter of fact, I believe my own institute had successes from the benchmarking that was undertook internally. But I think for RTOs in general and benchmarking with each other, it's more a matter of being on a long-term journey and taking inspiration from certain practice in certain institutes, and then over time adapting new ways of doing things from the inspiration that you gained. But to what extent that then feeds to successes directly, I think there are other inspirations that would add to that along the way.
So, yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I can build on that comment, I think, and particularly in relation to question number one, it's benchmarking doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? So you can't necessarily say that whatever results you achieve are specifically because of that. I can say that during the 2.5 year journey we went on in the RTO that I was involved in, we certainly tracked about a 10% improvement in performance across the group. But we were doing a lot of other work as well around market positioning, customer engagement, operational excellence. The one factor that did stick with me, though, was in terms of the impact on the people themselves, the managers of those teams. I considered for some time that team manager role to be the toughest job in the whole organization, because you were right in the middle between the kind of top managers, sometimes shouting down instructions, and the teams underneath saying, well, we need this and we need that, and also you have people in those positions who often that person has been the most successful technical person in the team, and then you pull them out and you say, all right, you're now the manager, and you go from being the best technical person in that area to being the worst manager in that area overnight, just like that. So how do you deal with that? And we had a real issue in terms of retention rate and attrition rate in that job, and putting in the balanced scorecard framework. I got some really good feedback from those managers saying, look, now I have a support network. I have people who are in the same job as I have. I can see what they're doing. I can see people who have been in that job for 5 or 6 years. I can go and get some mentoring, and we have a framework that we can have a conversation around. So that on its own was worth it for me.
Yeah, Nick?
So dealing with the first question then, success. I mean, I think you need to understand what is the benchmarking for. We have a 5A approach. The first A is aim. What are you trying to achieve? What's the aim? A whole lot of stuff you need to do there. The second is A for analysis. So if that's the aim, let's analyze what we're doing already so we understand it, and you dig deep. And you can use the 6 Sigma tools or 5 Whys or whatever it is. Then you can ask outside. The third A is ask outside, either common organizations or different organizations. And you want to go and benchmark with a real idea of what you're trying to achieve. Then you come back and it's about, if you like, advocating. Then now you have a change management problem. You've got these ideas, how do you get them? So you've got to sell, you've got to advocate, and then finally it's about applying. How do we apply them? So a success in benchmarking will always have the two A's either side, the ask and the aim and ask, and the advocate and the apply. In terms of returns, the benchmarking we are now doing much more is on the mindset change, individual change, and what we find is that if you can enable that process of learning from each other, being inspired by outside, looking at it as a journey, the results that we've had, we did a survey of 120 organizations around the world who'd been through our stuff and were applying it 5 years. We went 5 years later. The increase in productivity was about 20 to 25% increase in productivity. Individual, about 15 to 20% increase in team productivity, 80% increase in ideas flowing in the organization. And there was, in terms of ideas being adopted, there was about 40% increase. And that was through learning and being inspired by others. So you can measure in very hard terms, but you have to have an understanding right at the front of what you are trying to achieve. And what we want to achieve is, productivity, speed, innovation. Those are the three levers that we focus on in organizations within a complex VUCA environment where people are saying, we have no idea what's going on. How on earth do we do a strategy when tomorrow the strategy has to change? Within a complex environment, which is where our speciality is. So you have to have a very clear idea of what you want to achieve, rather than saying, doing a benchmarking exercise and then saying, okay, so how do we measure the success? I mean, you're late. You can still do it, but you're sort of late. Have a good idea of what you want to get.
Thanks, Nick. Patrick, so CSIRO successes, that was a challenge, eh?
Yeah, just to add on to that, being a CSIRO ex-member, I would like to say that we have, not in terms of numbers of startups or, we have achieved a number of process improvements in relation to, I can give examples, the research infrastructure. We have approached a couple of RTOs to find out what is their best practice in terms of management. Because that is about 30% of our annual budget in managing that. And also the other aspect, we have looked for the best practice, how the RTOs engage with SME sector, which is, I would say, in comparing with some other countries, the culture within the CSIRO is to look for maybe larger industries than the SME sector. But the contribution for the economy through the SME sector is significant. So our strategy is changing. So that is actually we are moving towards looking for more approaches to engage with the SME sector, how the scientists can engage with the SME sector. Coming back to the second question, our experience before joining the WAITRO, about 12 years experience with dealing with other RTOs and developing this benchmarking working group. The key aspects, I think David can expand more on that. Initially, we spent a lot of time trying to identify the framework, which is just the metrics and also the framework which is being accepted by all RTOs. That was a key element in our process compared to the WAITRO process. But in doing that, we were able to rectify some of the issues as we discussed before, that no RTO is, no two RTOs are similar. So we were able to take those factors into account by spending a lot of time initially in developing the framework and agreeing on the framework with all. But that can be done with a fewer number of RTOs. I think if there is a large number of RTOs, it is not an easy exercise.
Thank you, Patrick. I think time flies when we have such an excellent panel. So I think we'll soon be just finishing up. So I'll give you one sentence to sort of say what should we do on benchmarking, but I'll just leave that for a second. Then I'll put Jaime on the spot, and I'll ask Jaime, have you had any benefit from the benchmarking project that you've taken part of? So is there any success story or any little success you could share?
Thank you, David. Yes, actually, in Colombia, the science and technology system needs that the organizations that are part of it recertificate their participation. So at CTA, we are an Innovation and Productivity Center in Colombia. And recently, it was very useful for us to have this benchmark because it helped us to present the data to the recertification process. So it was very good for us. We can extract from the benchmarking best practices, you know. So it helped us also to develop our strategic plan. And it was part of our documentation for this process, so it was very good. We were thinking at CTA that this could be a very good tool for others to buy, as you say. You know, if they use this data for that, I think it not also helps to understand the ecosystem, but also to deploy a strategy for themselves. So it was very good, David. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jaime. And so that was, I gave you a little time there to think of the one sentence wrap up on the session and the recommendation. So if we start with Nick.
So one sentence, I mean, I would just say, just do it. And it's a journey, not a destination. And be curious.
Thanks. Mike?
Very good. That's like a brand slogan. I like that. Yeah.
Good.
So it could be quite a long sentence. I guess that one of the issues I've picked up, and I think it's really relevant, is to find that balance between the overall framework and the local context. And I think for me, the opportunity to do that exists here in organizations like WAITRO, because you've got a safe space where you can talk about and share and learn from each other. So carry on.
Thanks, Mike. Patrick?
Yeah, I would say our experience is establishing that network and learning from others.
Thanks. Erik?
In a time where we've got so much data, actually, we don't have much knowledge. And I would encourage to use the data to generate knowledge, and from that, start the journey of improving your institutes, and use the network as a way of getting inspiration in terms of how you can improve your institute.
Thank you. Now that kind of took away all my finishing comments, but I had one thing that I was thinking of when leadership was mentioned. It was the previous CEO of CSIRO from Australia, Jeff Garrett. He once wrote a book about leadership in research technology organizations. And the title of the book was Herding Cats. And that's kind of the fact, how do you herd cats? Because we're all going in different directions and our scientists are so smart. So it's really, I think that's quite a thought on the leadership and the smart people we have and how we can make them not go in the same direction, but understand the cats and how we interact with them. And otherwise, I would say we had this about the journey and the destination. I think that's very important. Yucheng was also mentioning the journey of the benchmark, that we enjoy the journey, but still that we then make up our minds what do we want to use it for when we get to the destination, so we actually implement some of all the good things that we've spoken about. And finally, I would say that we have another session after the lunch break where we'll also be discussing it and be discussing some of the processes a little more in detail, so there'll be an opportunity for everyone to speak, and you'll be fortunate because the moderator will be Knud Erik and not me, so that'll be much better. So let's put the hands together for a very good panel here. Thank you very much. And lunch is served.